Once these elements are in place, the road to democracy will be easy. And with democracy will come a meaningful and a lasting peace. There is no shortcuts to a real peace, and no amount of Israeli concessions, territorial or otherwise, will bring about a lasting peace any sooner. Palestinians alone can effect the peaceful resolution of the conflict by transforming their society from one of mobilized for armed struggle to one dedicated to bringing better and fuller lives to individual Palestinians. Arafat's bloody legacy will cast a shadow on Palestinian lives long after his death. Arafat served as both chairman of the PLO and the Palestinian Authority. Abu Mazen or any other contenders will not be able to fill both positions. The PLO must give way to a parliament made of representatives of local Palestinians and not just terrorist factions. The PLO, in short, must transform into a representative legislative branch and merge with the Palestinian Authority to create a parliamentary system, perhaps similar to that of Israel, where the cabinet or the executive is made up of the coalition leadership and the prime ministership is handed to the majority party leader. Thank
you. Thank you for having me here. I think it's fair to characterize aspects of Arafat's administration as mafioso. I'm no fan of corruption, and I think that that was indeed a problem. However, it's a bit disingenuous to express concern for the Palestinian people as an Israeli, knowing, and I do assume that you know, that Israel has been engaged in a military occupation of the remaining parts of Palestine that were not turned into Israel in 1948 since 1967. And anyone who knows anything about military occupation knows that the people living under military occupation should not be expected to embrace and enjoy that condition of living. And it is by its nature supposed to be temporary. So far, I've seen no indication that there's any attempt to end that military occupation or to fulfilling the Zionist project as it was stated at its origin, which was to take the entirety of the land of Palestine for the Jewish people of the world. I think that we should take heart in the fact that a great preponderance of the jobs that Palestinians hold and held, I should say in the past tense, were in the land of Israel, because that's proof positive to the fact that Palestinians have no problem working with and for Jewish people. So the characterization of this as a conflict of racism falls apart at that point, because you have Palestinians crossing the borders with their permits, waiting in lines in the blistering sun to get to their jobs in Israel for Israelis, having no intention of doing anything but to support their families and to work in peace, as Palestinians once did with Jews. Arabs of Christian or Muslim faith worked with Jews in peace in Palestine prior to the creation of the State of Israel by European colonialists. So I say that my structure for a peaceful resolution is to continue to see Palestine as one body, call it what you will, give everyone under that body equal rights under the law. So yes, I am implying that my personal choice would be to stay with the whole land of Palestine as one piece, Israel and the West Bank and Gaza all total. But I think that's unrealistic given the way that the negotiations have gone. There's a little chance of there being an Israel that engulfs the West Bank and Gaza, including its resident populations, because as Israel will tell you, its stated goal is to maintain a Jewish majority, and that would, quote, change the Jewish nature of the state. So its published, admitted goal is to protect the Jewish nature of the state, so to include the Palestinians under the democratic umbrella of the Jewish state's, I was going to say constitution, but there isn't one. The law in the state of Israel to engulf the Palestinians under that law with equal rights is not realistic. So, going with what we've been working for, the two-state solution is only doable insofar as the things that are agreed to be discussed are discussed when coming to the negotiating table. As I've heard it said before, when the Palestinians go to the negotiating table, it's two parties coming together to divide a pizza. But when you have one party eating the pizza the entire time as the negotiation is going on, you can't call that fair. So anyone who espouses the idea of eating the pizza while you're negotiating is not a fair broker. So insofar as the United States steps in as a broker, this is a farce at best. So first of all, I think that the American people, in having such a stake in this and being such supporters of the ongoing conflict, and I do say that we have a very important part as Americans in perpetuating the conflict with all of the United Nations Security Council resolutions that we veto regularly in favor of Israel. I think we should educate the American people, first and foremost, so that they know what's going on, and then let them decide. Many people will not care. They don't care not knowing, and knowing they may still not care. But the hope is that those people who are enlightened with some facts will come to the realization that without the United States contribution in a true fair manner, there's no way that these two peoples can make it on their own in any greater sense than Israel can make it on its own as a country without our support. So the comparison to Nelson Mandela is a good one, because there is a very direct parallel between the struggle of the Palestinian people and those living under horrible conditions, racist conditions in South Africa. So thank you for mentioning that.
Well, not quite in that
But
context.
but I would just end by saying that that we need to be involved as a fair broker, and then, and only then, with the end of the occupation, can we pursue the very well-reasoned democratic plans that the professor brought forth.
Okay. Thank you. What I'd like to do in the few minutes I have is to tell you a bit about how my thinking about the Middle East has changed. Not because I like to talk about myself, which I do, but I think what I've been thinking is fairly typical of a lot of people on the Israeli side, and certainly people of my generation. So let me start with where I agree. I disagree with a lot of what you said, but one thing I agree with you about is that this should not be, I don't know if it's not, but this should not be a racial conflict. You know, my family came from a Muslim country where they found refuge for many centuries. I grew up in France, and although my outlook is pretty thoroughly European, I've always felt quite comfortable with the Muslim and Arab culture. Coming to Israel, I felt very close to a lot of the Palestinians. I remember going to villages and weddings and staying there and feeling a lot closer in a way to that part of the culture than to, let's say, Eastern European Jewish immigration to that country. Now, like a lot of people, I thought that peace was possible and that peace was in the heart of the other side. Now, the only reason we couldn't have it was because the leadership was bad or was not ready at the time to make peace. And like a lot of people, I celebrated the Oslo Accords, and I thought that I bought the line that peace is made with the enemy and not with friends, and therefore we should put aside any misgiving that we have about Yasser Arafat and his association with terrorism and shake hands and move on. Now, the turning point for me was really the Intifada, and I don't want to get into a contest over who did what, but we just had the perception from the Jewish side was that we had a prime minister, Ehud Barak, who, with the United States blessing, gave what I think, from our perspective, was as much as we could give by way of concessions to the Palestinians that were represented by Yasser Arafat. And the way we perceived the world was that Yasser Arafat said no, and instead the Palestinian people chose the path of the Intifada.